We'll see. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live. Today is Thursday. I was going to say 7:02. Thursday, June 14th, year of our Lord.
Are we sure
2018.
Are we sure?
I know you pushed the button, right?
Yes. Let me check. Because I don't want you to have to do it over. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to keep talking as if we are. And then if I can do it over, we do it over.
Okay.
All right. So, year of our Lord 2018 is Facebook Live night for us. You know, we do this every Thursday at 7 o'clock. And we are Tony and Nicole Davis, your marriage and family relationship mentors. Yeah, go ahead and share it so people can know to tune in. And as we say every week, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the spiel by now, why do we say this? Because we have a track record of just doing that, having a good marriage, having a good family. Know to tune in. We start with this every week.
Don't pay attention. You,
okay. Hey, babe, I'm touching your leg under the table, so that means we can go on. Our goal is to provide the how-tos of acquired knowledge. We know there's no shortage of information out there, but where we really struggle is really how to implement it and get some results. So that's what we like to focus on. And every week we dedicate some time. We're not going to give a specific amount of time. I need to drop that part to discuss topics that can strengthen your marriage. And we usually speak on topics from one of our books. We wrote a book series called the Done Right series, and in no particular order, but first and foremost, since we're dealing with couples, we are a couple, been a couple for almost 26 and a half years now. Mm-hmm. We have the book, Marriage Done Right is Hard Work, but It's Worth It. This is a 31-day guide to put the fun, fire, and focus back into your marriage, or really just for keep it in your marriage if you already have it, or maybe you can even enhance the fun, fire, and focus. All three of those elements are extremely important because, quite frankly, who wants to do anything with a boring person, right? Mm-hmm. You can look boring. I know you tell me a lot of times when I wear my glasses, I look kind of boring, but we know
you look not boring, serious. You look really serious, and
but we know
muy inteligente.
Mm-hmm. But we know I'm not far from serious. I'm an extremely serious person, but I'm also you have some other adjectives to describe me as well. Mm-hmm. That contrary to serious. And we also have a book.
You make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that easy to do?
I think so.
I think you just be giving brother courtesy laughs. Then we have the other book, which was actually our first book. Why do I struggle with it? That's because the computer is on the angle. I think that's what it is. It's from where I'm sitting, babe. See, the screen is actually facing you. Look. I mean, I'm on the side. Yeah, see, because the camera's not the screen. The camera is actually facing you. That's why I struggle so much. Parenting Done Right is hard work, but it's worth it. And this is a 31-day guide with practical and effective parenting tips to win the battle for your children. We know a lot of times when people have children, they say, I just don't know what to do with them. They're in their own world. Oh, my goodness, I can't wait till they turn 18 and get out of here. And then they just struggle with the relationship. And then the kids go off, and then you're either estranged or you just don't have a good relationship. And we're here to tell you that that's not the kind of relationship that you have to have. You can get some different results. And this book is written with some practical tips to make sure that when we say win the battle, what we're really talking about is the battle where there's a lot of division between you and your children, or you and your child. And we help you overcome those hurdles so that you can really just have a great relationship with your children, even into adulthood. As we discussed on previous lives, after the children get older, they're still your children, where the relationship may change, but nevertheless, you can still have a great relationship with them. And then, quite frankly, we consider this one, even when we talk about marriage and parenting, we really consider this book, bam, yes. There we go, to be our most, really, I think we say this is our most important work.
It is.
Leadership Done Right is hard work, but we are today, of course. We can only speak to today, because if it's in the future, we can't claim it then, right?
Don't get distracted by me.
Okay, well, that's not hard to do. You sit up here with your legs out. Y'all can't see her legs out under this table. And I like her legs. But this is 31 essential disciplines for becoming an effective leader of impact from the inside out. And what this book helps you to do is to work on yourself. Get your stuff together. Leadership is not just barking out orders, telling folks what to do, especially if you have a title, whether it's deserved or not. A lot of times we think that's what leadership is. We think it's some title that's been conferred upon us, and we get to bark out orders to other people, and because we're in a position of authority, we just tell them what to do and not even focus on our qualifications. We don't focus on our ability to produce. And there's a lot of times that we're honest about it. A lot of times when we see people who are in positions of authority, their work product is really inferior.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like the results that they get from those people. So this book actually helps you become the kind of person that someone would want to follow, and they really enjoy following you. I mean, a lot of times, even with us, we've been put in leadership positions without even being asked, not even trying. But a lot of people who strive for that kind of stuff, they may struggle with it. And I think it's because we spend our entire lives focusing on ourselves to make sure that our work product was good and we did things with honesty and integrity so that we can look ourselves in the mirror and be proud of who we are. Then last but not least, we talked about this book last month, Speak to the Mountain. This is not a book that we were the primary authors, but we were co-authors in this book anthology. We're one of 30 plus authors, and we wrote a chapter on the topic of family within the context of that book is because of the mountain of family. We wrote a topic there, and what we really talked about then was discipling your kids and really understand that those your children are your first ministry. I mean, well, your marriage is your first ministry, but your children are your first disciples, and that you really need to train them up in the way that they should go. And we talked about that in that book.
And then a little plug for the other book that's coming out. You want to go ahead and just give a little plug?
No, you go ahead and get a little plug because.
Oh, come on, babe. You talk about it. Babe. Never mind. Okay, and then as you've seen on my Facebook page, releasing next month in July, we're so excited, is Junior Rise, Apostolic Women on the Front Lines. And that's another anthology that has about 40 plus women from all across the nation who are speaking on various topics. What?
No, I'm going to say the reason I didn't want to give a plug. You didn't know what I was talking about? I had no idea what you were talking about. I'm like, oh my goodness, did we talk about writing another book? And she wants me to throw it out. Now I'm drawing a blank. That's what I thought was happening.
No, Junior Rise. You are familiar with Junior Rise?
I am extremely familiar with Junior Rise. I mean, that's the book that's right up your alley.
Yes, and so that's a book that's coming out, and in that particular book, because in the Speak to the Mountains, we speak on family, and we do a chapter in there writing specifically about what it takes to help you help your child find their identity, which is so important so that they are able to stand in a time and a day where there's so much pressure to be anything other than who you believe you are to be. And so you really need to be clear about who you are and who you are as God sees you. That's in Speak to the Mountains. But in the other one, Junior Rise, I am talking about marriage, and I'll just keep it there. So when it's released and you see it, especially at the conference, we will be releasing it at the conference. If you're planning to come to Junior Rise, which is July 11th through the 14th, you can find that information on our Facebook page as well. The books will be there, and all the authors, or a number of the authors, not all of them, will be there to sign them, and you can meet them and greet them and hear a lot of them talk about what inspired them or the topics that they've written on. It's going to be really good. It's going
to be really liberating for the women, but also in addition to that, for those who may say, well, Junior Rise and is talking about apostolic women on the front line. I would really, it's not a women's conference. It's a gathering. Of course, we're going to be talking about empowering women, but it's also for men. And as a matter of fact, I really encourage you to encourage your men to come. Any ladies who may be interested in attending, bring your men, because the only way this is going to work is if your men partner with you. And I think that's a key element. It's not some big overthrow and women rising up, taking over and just like putting the gun to your head and bam, we're you guys are in charge now. No, it's just really about understanding the value and worth of your women, of the women in your life, and then you guys working in concert and in partnership to become all that God has called you to be, and really impact the kingdom and really represent them here on earth as a partnership, and not just talk about it, but now we can really be about it as one.
And that is powerful. That's
what Junior Rise is about. So it's not, like I said, it's not just a women's conference gathering, meeting, get together, come together, shout, scream, yell at some divas and all that. No, that's not what it's about. It's about really educating and moving forward. So I'm really, why are you looking at me like that?
Oh, because you're making me happy.
Okay. Now you just had to sketch my brain again with your dental formula. So anyway, go ahead. I forgot what I was saying.
No, it's just a perfect segue into talking about what we're going to speak on this evening, which is unity in marriage. And it takes, of course, both the man and the woman working together. Absolutely. In order for that to be accomplished. No one person in a relationship can create all of the aspects of a relationship to make it work. It just doesn't happen. And it's the same with society.
It doesn't happen effectively.
It doesn't happen effectively. Mm-hmm. Whether it's parenting, marriage, ministry, a business, whatever work it is that you're doing, and it requires people, it requires both the man and the woman to play their respective roles in order for it to effectively work, right?
Absolutely.
And so we know, being married for 26 and a half years, that although unity is something you desire and you want it to happen, it's very difficult at times to get unity to work the way you want it to work, because you're two individual people. You know, you grew up in different neighborhoods, different communities, different experiences, different rearing, right?
Different ideologies.
Yes.
And then you have and different sexes, which means a lot of times, and literally the majority of the time, you have different filters, so different ways of processing the same information. It's almost like that Yanni Laurel thing, right? You know, I hear one thing, I see one thing, and it's the same exact thing, and you see it differently. But you also brought up a good point. You talked about the way you want it to work, and I think that's also one of the reasons why it's so hard to achieve it, because it's something that we all strive for, but it's really difficult to achieve or maintain for a long period of time. Because when you say the way you want it to work, a lot of times there's a disconnect between how you want unity to even flow. Because let's be honest about it. We talked about it a little bit last week about not being selfish, but really for most of us, if we're going to talk about how we want it to work, unity simply means this: you see it my way and agree with me.
Yes.
And then if you bow down to my way of doing things, and then we can really flow.
Yes.
I mean, really,
because after all, I know the best way that all of this should happen.
I know the best way, and you should respect my opinion, because we talk about respecting opinions, but we take these truths to the extreme, and before you know it, we still struggle.
And with that struggle, it's a lot about our ideologies and our expectations, because you come into a marriage, I don't know, it could be from what you've read, something you've seen on TV, maybe somebody else that you've seen. Maybe you think they have a wonderful relationship, and so you want your marriage or your relationship to look like theirs, but you're not those people. That's not, whatever their situation is, you may not have those variables operating in your life.
You don't have their mindset. You don't have their work ethic. You don't have their conflict resolution ability. There are a lot of difference in elements between you two and those two. So I mean, really, you have 4 different elements coming into play, and you're trying to make it work. So you have to, in other words, a lot of times we say, if you want what I have, you have to do what I've done and go through my struggles and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times you need my mindset, you need my work ethic, and my ability to really process in order to get the same kind of results that I have, and vice versa. And it's for those who may be following you and those of who you may be following. I mean, you really got to bring all that into play.
And these are issues that you're dealing with every single day.
Every single day.
And so you're dealing with them every day, and then they're piling on, because you got, you're dealing with the children, you're dealing with the finances, you're dealing with just your interests, what I like, what I want to watch, what you want to watch, how I like to sleep temperature wise, just even in the house. That's a whole issue in itself.
But temperature wise, for those
don't get distracted.
No.
Okay, go ahead. You're gonna get distracted.
No, I was gonna make a point. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna write it down. Unity and priority. So because you touched on something, but temperature wise, I'm just gonna tell you about our little temperature disagreement. As you can see, Nicole is from the Akiba land, and I'm from Iceland.
The motherland.
She's from a motherland. She is not a crossover candidate, and she loves to keep the house, everything. I mean, just hot. I mean, like, I think the prerequisite for me to come to bed is for the temperature to be so hot that my nose will bleed. My God, it's like I can't believe it's like, and you're like, oh, it's so comfortable in here. Well, I'm cold, and I'm the exact opposite. I mean, we might as well be in Alaska. I want it freezing. So we have differences of agreement there. I mean, that has really not much to do with unity, but it does when we're trying to sleep together in the same bed, right?
Well, yeah. So, okay. So then that's another one.
But we're not going to go there. But what you actually said was was you have all these things coming into play. You use like the bills. You talked about the bills. You talked about the children. And see, those things are very important as well. We can't dismiss and discount those.
Right.
But what we have to do is make sure that we don't put those things, give them the wrong priority.
Right.
Whereas we exalt them above the marriage. I think that's the problem, because a lot of times you can say, hey, I'm going to focus on this, and then you start neglecting other things, and you really have, even though we don't really necessarily believe in balance, because as we like to say, or as we've heard and we really believe the philosophy, you don't really see very many successful people who are balanced. Something's going to have to give. You just have to choose what you're going to be willing to let go.
Right.
But nevertheless, if you're married, you can't let your children go.
Right.
But they have to be given proper priority, and they can't, their time, especially with the time and the dedication, they can't outweigh what's going on between you and your spouse.
Right. And so even with that, in the beginning, it would be nice. I mean, that's why premarital counseling is so important, because you first need to be on the same page about what is unity. What does unity look like for you? And so as I was thinking about that word, I could go to the dictionary and see what the
Greek and the Hebrew.
And what they say is unity. But when I think about unity, it's the state of acceptance and submission.
Elaborate on it, babe.
So we have our own thoughts and ideas, right? And we must respect and accept those ideas and thoughts of each other. But
so you gave two very important. And for those of you who don't know, here's what Nicole and I do when we talk about these Facebook Lives. We pick a topic, and we pick some things that we want to talk about. Like it says, usually one of the topics from our books, and we say, okay, let's talk about this, let's talk about that, and then we just go for it. So what you're really doing is really hearing us have a conversation like we would have in the house if it was just the two of us. So with that being said, because I'm going to throw something at her, and she may not be prepared. Just like with that whole talk about the next upcoming book, I didn't know what she was talking about, but nevertheless, I said, man,
you're such a professor. Just go.
Yeah. Anyway, but you said accept, and what other word?
And submit.
And no, you said it was another A. We said accept and accept and respect. What does that even mean?
So to accept is to understand that you're different, and I have to be okay with that. So that means you don't necessarily have to think and agree with what I'm doing or saying. And this is the only way we can see who is on, so you know. But that needs to be okay. For our unity, it's not that we agree on everything, because we absolutely do not. In fact, Tony and I are both very strong-willed, opinionated, and kind of
dogmatic in our views
about a lot of and
we're not always in the same camp.
And that's the thing that makes this. That's how you know this is God for 26 and a half years, because there are a lot of things that he feels very strongly about that I just absolutely do not agree, and vice versa.
And the converse is also true.
Yes, and it's in all areas, whether it's the children, whether it's the sexes, the battle of the sexes, what a man or woman should do or not do. When it comes to scripture, church, it's so many. In fact, it could be everything. But what we are learning, because it's a continual learning process, is that I have to accept that. I don't have to agree with it, but I have to accept that. And so we always have to keep in the forefront of our mind what is most important to this union. What is it that we've established where the children are concerned, or where our marriage is concerned, or our finances, or religion, or politics. That's probably
the one area where we
absolutely agree.
We agree the most. We even though there are some candidates and stuff that you may say, yeah, he's good, but I'm like, I can't stand him.
And I'll be like, really? Why?
And vice versa.
I'm
like, yeah, he's all right with me. Or she's all right with me. You be like, oh no, Tony. I mean, but for the most part, just philosophically, I guess politics is where we and I guess one of the reasons that we're probably the same there is because we really don't have a political view necessarily from a party perspective. We're usually kingdom perspective. What does the Bible say? What's our stance here? And we don't switch because a DNR has an opinion for or against it. We can separate that. I think that's one of the reasons why we flow together so well politically. But anyway, keep going.
Right. And so just keeping in mind all of those things, we know that we are committed to the marriage. And so if there is some area that we're struggling in, we're going to have to deal with it because we believe we're supposed to be together. And so if you start out the gate with that being a question, then it's going to be really difficult to maintain unity when things start getting hard.
Yeah, and you know what? With that being said, Nicole, I know you talked about we said submit and accept, right? But I think the biblical some of the biblical examples are really still really important. You know,
especially submit.
Yes, but when it comes to marriage, you know, as we know from like what Genesis 2:24, Ephesians 5:31, Mark, Matthew, wherever it is, you know, and the two shall become one flesh, right? So we need to learn how to walk together, and you know, one biblical numerics. The number one is unity, right?
Yes.
So the two have to really come together. They have to come together as one. And that's one of the purposes of marriage. You know, we want to share, and the only way we're going to really share effectively is share our lives effectively is to really come together as one. But also in addition to that, one of my I love, you know, I think it's Ephesians 4, where it says, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the spirit, binding yourself together with peace. And you know, that was not necessarily a unity scripture per se, but you know, it's just from you know, we look at the exegesis of it, or that the whole context of that scripture, but that's still something to be gleaned there. But you know, just really keeping yourselves united in the spirit, which means you got to be focusing on the things of God, and let's focus on how can we have some peace here and really and not have a bunch of strife. In other words, let's work together and do the things that God has put us together to do. Because if we're fighting, we know we've just given place to the enemy, and we've set ourselves back, and really we wasted time. And, you know, now that I have gray in my goatee and all that kind of stuff, I mean, you still look young, but I have gray in my goatee. You know, we don't have much time to be wasting fighting and stuff. It's just unproductive waste of time. So, and we understand that. So it's like, yeah, you know, you ticked me off, I ticked you off, but okay, now that we've been ticked off, because really we may not agree on something, the way something should have been handled, something should have been processed, whatever the case may be. But we have to really get over that and move quickly, because like I said, we don't have time to be wasting.
And I mean, since you done broke out the scriptures and stuff, we really have to understand. I mean, like really understand, not just something that we say, but we do have an adversary who is working diligently to steal, kill, and destroy. And what is at the forefront of that? Marriage. The enemy hates family. He hates marriage. He hates men and women being unified. And it doesn't even have to be in marriage. It's us walking and working together in agreement on any level. He's going to do everything he can to destroy that. So he will take something that seems so small and minor, and we will allow him to magnify that as some issue that's enough to cause us to divorce.
And that's what we do. We will magnify that and not even focus on unity. You know, we say, you know, as a matter of fact, and because of that, I can't even get along with you anymore. And, you know, and for those of you who've heard me speak, especially the men, I say, you know, cut your wife some slack for not agreeing with you, because by virtue of the fact that there have been many things that you've done and said, and you changed your mind. And really, when you change your mind, is what you're saying to yourself is, I no longer agree with myself. So if you no longer agree with yourself, your wife just beat you to the punch and disagreed with you earlier. So if you can disagree with you, give her a little bit of room to disagree with you as well. But, you know, and this whole thing about unity is so important. I know about the scriptures, but even naturally speaking, and once I know it's a lot of lady sports fans as well, but from a natural perspective, you know, when you look at sports, one of the biggest problems that we have with sports teams is unity. You know, unity must be kept. You know, you may say, well, what's happening in the clubhouse? What's happening in the locker room? You know, who's going to control the locker room? Who's going to lead the locker room? Because we've seen it, especially sports fans. If you can have a talented team that just struggles, and then they'll say, well, why can't they get along? And why aren't they winning? And then what we find out is that there was a lot of strife in the locker room, or we'll see that there's so much strife in the locker room. We've seen teams win championships, and then you'll see players will say, you know what, I just got to get away from this guy. And whereas they could have been better together, they decide to go their separate ways. And a lot of times they may get with good organizations. They may struggle. Who knows? But regardless, unity is so important to effective work. You gotta have unity. So it works everywhere. And then like even in the corporate environment, we talk about this a lot. A lot of times when, you know, people say I can't get along with my spouse, and they just want to dismiss them. But how many times have you come together in the workplace because you had to do a presentation, especially for those of you who may be in sales? It's like, you know what, I got to work with you so we can go ahead and make this presentation so we can make this money. You'll work all day long with that person and you can't stand them. But yet with your spouse, you will just dismiss them and cut them off because you have a difference of opinion. And it doesn't make sense to me. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because if you're doing that with your coworkers, you've already proven to yourself that you can work with somebody when you disagree with them. So now just bring that same level of dedication to the house.
Right.
And in the workplace, the dedication is we need to make that money. And in the house, it should be we need to make that money, because the reality is to make that money, meaning this, that we got to have a successful marriage.
Right.
And that should be important to me.
And it should be from the standpoint of raising healthy children, relationally healthy children, establishing a legacy. Like, all of those things should matter to us as a family. Once we decided to be together, the state of our family. So dysfunction, and we'll probably have to do a live on that, because that is that dysfunction. Because that's at the core. Yeah, it's at the core. Because we don't have any conflict resolution skills. We don't know how to deal with one another when things get hard. And just like those examples you gave with work and sports, they have incentives. Yeah, and so those incentives are enough to make them make the choice to submit. And that was the other word that I used, because submission is really important, because you just can't always have your way for the good of the whole or the good of the team. You're going to have to fall back on what you would prefer or what you don't like, because we need to win, or we need to get this report out. And it's the same with our family.
Or get this new business.
It's the same with the family. The incentive should be, we need to make sure that our family is healthy, and that we show our children how to deal with conflict, and that we're teaching them what it means to stay committed to a promise or a covenant or a contract or whatever, however it is you want to look at it.
Keeping your word.
Just keeping your word. And so you're going to be tested on that anytime you make that kind of declaration that that's how you're going to be. First of all, the enemy is going to come right for that, but life is going to cause you to really see, who are you? Character development comes in you making that commitment with your word, that come hell or high water, because those are the vows we make for good or bad, right? Rich or poor. We're going to stick this out, having no idea what that's going to look like years down the road. And so if you don't know in advance why this is important and why we have to learn to work together for this to work out, then it's going to be very difficult when things get hard to maintain that commitment you made on that beautiful day when you spent all that money.
But ahead. You know what, babe, when you said that, you said you're going to see life is going to present some circumstances, and I'm paraphrasing, probably mixing 3 or 4 sentences together, but life is going to present some circumstances where you're going to see who you really are.
Right.
And here's what I would say. I mean, it's really for anybody, but especially for the Christian folks who may be watching this. What I would say is stop giving yourself excuses to not conform your actions to the word of God. Because, a lot of times, your thought process and your mindset may not line up, but don't give yourself permission to act contrary because of your circumstance. And then of course, here's our favorite justification. I'm only human, right? Yeah, but you should be trying to be a spirit being. Read the book of Romans. I believe it's like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. You should be trying to be more of a spirit being more so than a human being, right? So, and especially when especially if you have a church leadership position, you want people to believe you so deep anyway. So
not a religious being.
Go ahead and be deep. So go ahead and be deep and walk in the spirit. But stop giving yourself excuses to act like a butt.
Right.
And especially stop giving yourself excuses to stop acting like a jerk to your spouse. Because that's one of the major barriers to unity. Because your spouse, they'll see you acting that way, and then they see you justifying it, and then that becomes an entirely different conversation. I just moved that, so I don't know if I just jacked something up. But your hypocrisy is really one of the major barriers to unity, because when you display that hypocrisy, then you start getting to some of those qualifiers, like your spouse will say, well, you routinely you always do this, because they're waiting for the hypocrisy, and it's kind of hard to really want to join and lock arms with somebody who you think is really a hypocrite. I mean, granted, you may not call them a hypocrite every day, but in your back of your mind, you're just waiting for the hypocrisy to show itself,
right?
And it's like, so you want to be with them, but you really don't want to be with them because they may just act all funky, and especially when you say you're the man or woman of God. So really, just stop giving yourself excuses to be funky. I know it's not easy, but nevertheless, like as we say in our books, all of our books have the little subtitle: is hard work. So go ahead and put the hard work in and stop being funky.
Right. Right. So when we think about unity, we've talked a little bit about what it is. And so we also need to talk about the converse, what it is not. And we said a little bit about it. It's not agreement, and it's definitely not conformity. You are not trying to get someone to think like you and go along with everything that it is that you're doing or saying, because we are individuals.
Well, it's not mindless. It's not mindless. No spine agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because ultimately you want to walk in agreement, right? You know, you're in agreement. You're going somewhere. You're arm in arm. I mean, really, that's how the Tower of Babel was built, because they were unified and
in the overarching,
and they were in agreement, even though they weren't even doing the right thing per se. But nevertheless, it's like, hey, when you walk in unity, there's nothing that you can't do. Mm-hmm. So you really want agreement, but you don't want this. Well, I want agreement just for the sake of having agreement, because, you know, once again, as I like to say, I'm going to reiterate it again, especially from a man's perspective. I know a lot of men who will say that they agree with their spouse just to keep the peace, but the reality is the war that goes on inside the mind. There was really no agreement.
There's no agreement.
And as a matter of fact, so the peace was really just a lack of argument in the house, but you had a lot of warfare going on in your head. So there is no agreement there.
And that's not agreement.
Or just doing it his way or doing it her
Mm-hmm.
way. That's not agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You have to talk about it to make sure that you have an understanding. And really, if you think about it from a man's perspective, it says, you know, I'm supposed to dwell with you according to knowledge. And I got to get to know you. And in some ways I can say, man, she's really great. In other ways I can say she's really off. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I have to know that. And then,
but even in that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But if you say you say I'm off,
no, you could, but you could be off, and it could be true.
But it and could the converse, be not. So give the whole story, give it all, because if a person, and it could be a man or a woman, if you have a certain thought or an idea about a person, and that's how you feel, just because it's how you feel doesn't make it right. You don't understand, or I don't understand, and so what are we supposed to do? Seek to understand, and that doesn't happen. You go right off into whatever it is you think or believe, and that becomes how you operate.
No, that's not where I was going with that.
I needed to just address that first part. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Where I'm going is the person could be off.
They could be off,
and it could be true,
and it could be true.
And now you still have to figure out how to walk together with that person and understanding where they're coming from. So, for instance, let me see.
So, do you try to walk with them? Them off, or do you try to help them to not be off?
Well, there's no bright line answer to that question.
Okay.
But because here's where I'm going. So let me just give an example. It's kind of hard when you're on these lines because you have to keep talking. You can't just ponder for 5 minutes. But let's just say if you have a woman, your spouse, and I'm going to use from the man's perspective dealing with the woman. Let's say if she's had a bunch of bad relationships prior to being married to you, or maybe she had, as they call them, daddy issues, right? So those things then just go away from her mindset and how she processes information. So when certain things may come up, that sometimes the man may pay for things that he hasn't done. And he's like, well, I've never done this to you. I've never treated you this way. So therefore, you shouldn't respond to me this way, right? And then the reality is, it goes back to relationships that were prior to you. So that's what I mean. So she could be off in the way she responds, or the way she does things, or even the way she thinks about something, or the way she processes something. And you're right. Your assessment of her could be, but you love her. And then you have to walk that out with her as you're going through the process. And so that. So you can't. Yeah, that's what I'm saying there. So
and think about it.
Or from the man's perspective, it could be he can have daddy issues or mommy issues, or abandonment issues, whatever the case may be, or father was an alcoholic, father used to beat him upside the head, whatever the case may be.
Well, and let's look at it from another perspective, because you use that example a lot. So now I get a chance to give you another example to consider to go along with that. So let's take that same situation, and there can be triggers. It's just like somebody that has post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's another one.
You can do things that are the same things that mother or father used to do, and maybe you don't know that they did those things. And so when you do them, that's a trigger to the other person that then sends them off to thinking or feeling or experiencing.
And that may be a trigger for them, and they may not be able to properly express it. They don't
know. They may not even know. And that's a perspective that you don't think about, because when you're in a relationship, you're automatically thinking whatever is happening is because of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're responding to me this way because something is wrong with you.
Uh-huh.
When it could be so many other things, and those things only come out through conversation, and that's why
you got to have the conversations.
You got to have the conversations.
It's imperative.
You got to have the conversations because you simply don't know. I mean, our lens and our perspectives are so narrow. And if we stay in that without allowing exploration or allow a third party to come in, because I'm a mediator by profession, you don't allow someone to come in and assist you, then you stay stuck there. Mm-hmm. And you make all of your decisions from that standpoint. So it's hard to maintain or get unity when the perspective or the expectation is that it needs to flow or fall mm-hmm. within this parameter in order to work.
Yeah. So, babe, what are some of the biggest barriers to unity? To me, because it's something like we all know we want to walk together. We want to have this oneness. Or you finished talking about what it is not. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah. So I think the main thing is that it's not conformity, like agreement or unity, because unity is not necessarily agreement. And we kind of work that out.
Agreement, right?
Right.
It's not spineless.
Right.
Unthought about it.
But it's definitely not conformity. And so you may see, like you said, the man, the husband, to say, "Well, I just agreed, so she would get out of here or be quiet or whatever."
Keep the peace.
If you know how you say, "I might be standing up on the outside or sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside."
I've never said that, but I've heard it said before.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the you is in general, not you specifically.
Go ahead, Dick.
So those are the things that are also necessary to think about, like to consider one another, to allow each person to have some say, because that's what God has done. He doesn't make us robots. Even our ability or willingness to follow him and to do what he has called us to do, that is our complete choice. That's our decision if we're going to do that. So when you're working on unity, don't think that means you have to forego whatever it is you desire, however it is you want to see it done, whatever ideas and thoughts you have about something, but you have to be willing to have the conversation about it and figure out what's going to work for the two of you together. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go your way, but parts of it can.
And I think one of the things that's even key with that, you talking about all the foregoing your ideas, your thoughts, your desires, wishes, mm-hmm. and dreams and all that kind of stuff. I think in order to have unity, really, you need to make sure that both people's goals and desires are being met. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the key things to it, and we talk about not just being like spineless blanket agreement, mm-hmm. but I think one of the key things to that is, okay, here are your goals, here are my goals, we lay them out. And okay, but based on where we are right now, what's practical right mm-hmm. now? Because sometimes, you may say, I want to do X, Y, and Z, but the kids are 5 and 3. Mm-hmm. So the kids are 5 and 3, and this is, and you're the stay-at-home mom right now. You right. can't do all this. So maybe you can do this when the kids are 10 and 12 or right. 12 and 10, whatever right. whatever the numbers may be. Right. So you may have to look at the timing. I mean, and timing is very important. I know a lot of times, especially as faith people, we think timing means right now, all the time. But sometimes timing can mean 5, 10, 20 15 years from now. And guess what? God will still be with you, and you'll still be young, and you'll be able to perform it. But we think everything is right now. And then when it doesn't happen, of course, the enemy just you just give credit to the enemy mm-hmm. for stopping you. But the reality is, you out of season, you out of timing. So you really plan that stuff out properly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Unity, but that's one of the things I just want to bring up there when you said that's what is not. You don't have to forego, but I think everybody can have their dreams and desires met. It's just when.
It's just when and how.
And how.
Yep. And how. Yep. How are we going to do this together? So some of the barriers mm-hmm. to unity is not determining what are major issues and what are minor issues mm-hmm. and how those will be addressed. That's a barrier. Yeah, because and you know what? And because once again, with those different filters, sometimes we may have different definitions on what's major and what's minor. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times that becomes a barrier because we'll just use us as an example for this hypothetical. I may say something is major, you may say something is minor. Mm-hmm. So now the argument will become about, well, why don't you think this is major? Or what did I say? I may think it's major, you may think it's minor. Then you may say,
And then I'm mad at you. You mad at me because I think it's major, and I'm mad at you because you think it's minor, and that becomes the argument, right?
Yep.
So, but the reality is, you got to really learn like what's really important and what's not important,
and that whatever is really important doesn't get accomplished because now we're stuck right here.
We're stuck on definition.
We're stuck on trying to get you to my position. I'm stuck in my position. As opposed to us, okay, well, why is that so important to you that we do it like that or that we have that?
Which leads to the other thing. Another barrier is now you got to be right.
Now you got to be right.
You got to be right. So
that goes with your position.
Yeah. So now, as opposed to us working together, I'm trying to be right. And if I'm right, that means I have to show you that you're wrong. And if I'm trying to show you that you're wrong, there's no unity in that. There's no togetherness in that. As a matter of fact, it's like championing in defeat. It's like I want to hold up the trophy and watch you walk off the court or walk off the field with your head down. And so if I told you so,
if I got to be
right
right
again,
if I got to be right, that means I'm now rigid and selfish.
Oh yeah, that's another barrier, right?
That's a barrier,
and that's a character thing.
Go ahead.
That's a character thing. And yeah, we're gonna go. You say go ahead.
No, you said that's a character thing.
Oh yeah, that's a character thing because if you're rigid and selfish, you're not going to flow. As we talked about last week on Facebook Live, marriage is all about sharing. And there's no sharing if you're rigid and selfish.
Yeah.
And there's no share. Look, if we're going to be married and we're going to be part of that, and we need some different. These are the chairs, but my goodness, these chairs are so uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
But
we can try something else.
It's like my butt hurts
sitting
on these chairs. But
we should have been done. But okay.
Yeah, we should have been done.
All right.
So anyway, but if you're going to be in a relationship, a marriage, a relationship that you call marriage. In addition to sharing, I think at the end of the day, you should be looking at how can I make my spouse the best that they can be? How can I be an asset to them?
Yeah.
I mean, really just fundamental. I mean, that's not even a deep spiritual thing. How can I be an asset to this person? Otherwise, if I can't be an asset to you, there's no reason to get married to you. Right? If I don't want to share my life with you, then I shouldn't get married to you. So if I can't be an asset and I don't want to share, and that's what rigid and selfish means, then then there's no way we're going to have a good relationship. Right. And it just breaks the fundamental reason, one of the fundamental reasons to get married. You know, I'm going to be rigid and selfish. That's just dumb. But that's diametrically opposed to unity, being rigid and selfish.
And it's diametrically opposed to why you said you wanted to be married, because you want to share your life. That is not easy. Sharing your life, which is every aspect of who you are. So knowing that you're being rigid and you got to have it your way, you know, you stuck in your ideas about what has to happen. You have to be right. Then you're not being a team player. And that's a barrier.
That's a major barrier.
Because if you cannot work together, then you are not going to accomplish whatever it is you want to see happen for your family. And that's all dysfunction.
That's extreme. That's major dysfunction. And also, just as I said, you should be looking to build your spouse up. So if I'm trying to be right and beat you down, what I'm really doing is diminishing you. And whether it's articulated, whether it's expressed or not, subconsciously, you know that this person is trying to beat me down. This person is really trying to devalue me. And if you're trying to devalue me, or if I'm trying to devalue you, there's no way we'll want to give ourselves to each other. And so it doesn't have to be expressed. So we can be functional. What's that? You said functioning, dysfunctional. What's that word you like? What's that phrase you like to use? Functioning, we function in the dysfunction and all that. Yeah. So we learn to function in the dysfunction. Yep. That's what we do.
That becomes our norm.
And there's no unity in that.
There's no unity. There's no prosperity or posterity or in any of that. Because we have to realize, and it's very difficult, especially when you find yourself arguing a lot. You just can't seem to get on the same page about things. And it's the things that just aren't even worth arguing about. Like, we can't even agree with where the paper towel should sit on the counter, or how to open or close the toothpaste, or the toilet paper, should it be over or under. Like, you find yourself arguing about
the dumbest things.
Yes. And those things are enough to destroy the union. And so when all those things are going on, it feels like your spouse is your enemy. And that's a barrier. When you look at the one that you say you want to share your life
But if you think about it, if you're trying to devalue me and you're not being a team player and you're trying to be right, fundamentally your spouse is not your enemy, but they're treating you like the enemy. I mean, really, that's what you're doing. You're treating them like they are the enemy. And that's why you would come to that conclusion. But we need to do something about that.
And that's the thing. If you find yourself feeling that way about your spouse, Is it worth trying to get through that, work through that, and get on the same page? What are you willing to do in order for that to not be your situation every day and not function in the dysfunction? Why?
Or every other day, some people just go on that roller coaster.
Yes. Why would you want that to be the way that you live? And if you're going to be together for the rest of your lives, why would you want that to be the example that you have for your children, when we should be striving for wedded bliss? Like, we really can be happy with each other as different as we are, on so many things. But at the core, the foundation of who we are, we love each other and we want to see the best happen for each other. And we want to see our family beat the odds and go beyond the statistics, because God is the center of our lives. And when we have scripture that tells us what to do, there's a choice attached to that. We have to choose to do the things that the Bible says.
You got to be willing to change.
And that's
the bottom line.
That's a barrier, that's not simplified. Being willing.
But that's simplified.
You got to be willing.
You got to be willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to change and get better,
mm-hmm.
and not try to have somebody else justify your mess. I mean, that's what it really boils down to.
Right. Friends, you mean like people that you can go to talking about the stuff and they'll listen and co-sign or support? Because that's enough to justify.
Well, yeah, your friends can justify your mess, but also you're asking, if you're not willing to change, what you're really asking your spouse to do is to justify your mess.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is just me.
Mm-hmm.
Take it or leave it and all that kind of stuff. Like, well, I've already told you that I want to leave it.
Right.
Right. Look, I'm telling you, I don't like you. And I don't like the way you do X, Y, and Z. And if you know that that's hurting your spouse and that's causing dysfunction in your relationship, you need to look in the mirror and be willing to change.
Right. And so there are some things. There are some things that you can do that I have listed here as foundational deal breakers, that if these things are a part of your relationship, are in your marriage, then you should be able to weather any storm as long as you work at these things. Because remember, we say marriage done right is hard work,
but it's worth it.
It really can work. And in fact, anything that you desire, anything that you want, you're going to have to work for it. Nothing comes easy. Nothing worth having just is going to plop down in front of you and be all peaches and cream every day for the rest of your life. That's just unrealistic to think. So it's the same with marriage.
You're messing with some people's theology now, babe.
Well, that's all right. So here are some things that if you put these in place, then you can see the fruit of your labor, and you can have the kind of relationship that you can be happy to go home to and enjoy being around that person and allow laughter and joy to be in your homes again. So prayer is at the top of the list. If you don't pray together at any time for anything, you need to change that, because that is the glue. It's something that you hear said, families that pray together stay together. Well, you got to pray and believe, and you got to do what you pray. So there are other aspects to it.
That's one of those, it's a cliche because it's true.
Right. And but it works when you work it. So the other thing is forgiveness. Whew. You got to stay in a posture of forgiveness. How many times should you forgive? 77, 70 times 7,
490.
70.
Which is really not
and that's every day.
It's an infinite number. Yeah.
You
can put your leg on me.
Okay.
That's good.
No. That's every day. And so the caveat to that, though, is we're not talking about forgiving destructive type behavior. That's a whole nother conversation. We're not talking about if it's abuse or constant infidelity or drug or alcohol addictions. We're not talking about those kind of things. We're just talking about regular, everyday kind of things that you deal with, where they're offending you, getting on your nerves, not agreeing with you, not wanting to support what you're doing.
Just give your spouse some room to be imperfect.
Period.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and everything. So forgiveness. The other thing is mutual respect. Mutual respect for ideas, opinions, goals, dreams, aspirations, work schedule. Mutual respect, space, whatever it is. Mutual respect. It's not just the woman respecting the man. It is submit ye one to another. Submission and respect go hand in hand.
Because both of you guys are godly,
and you're both important. Mutual submission, and I talked about that. And then priorities must be the same. So when we're talking about the priorities, we're talking about what is it that we're working towards.
Priorities aren't the same. You just won't have unity. I mean, you can have all the religious you can have all the religious talk you want. You can have all the prayer you want. If your priorities aren't the same, you're not going to walk in unity.
Yeah.
Look, and that's just the truth of the matter. We can talk about what God can do, but what God wants you to do is walk in unity, and it's not going to happen if you guys are going in different directions.
If the family is important to you and us spending time together and doing things together is important to you, but that's not important to me, I'd rather work.
Excuse my English, it ain't going to work.
Yeah, I'm always at work. This project is important, or they need me down at the whatever organization you're a part of, or your family comes first. That's more important than taking care of your own household. Those things will destroy your marriage.
You just have to get on the same page. And there's no bright line test for what you may do in certain seasons of your life.
Right. But you need to work together even in those things because
there may be a season where it's like, look, this is the season where I'm going to be spending a lot of time at work and building up the career. But we both can do that and have 2, 3, 4 kids,
right.
Right. And have a great relationship in a great house, but just know where you are within the particular season and talk about it and talk about what you're going to do and make sure that you're even on the same page with that. So that's the key. I mean, that's the key.
So as an example of that, because you use education, Tony and I both wanted to pursue higher degrees from the time that we met. That was important. It was important to Tony. It was important to me. He was working on his bachelor degree when I met him. I was not working on my degree. He helped me get started working on my degree. And then we ended up getting married. And you stopped going to school and I continued going to school. And I actually got my bachelor's degree before he got his bachelor's degree.
And as a matter of fact, I was only one semester away from completion and you were just getting started. But just the way things worked, it's like, man.
Yeah, because I don't even know why you ended up not being able to finish. Did you go out to sea? I think that was it. Once we got to Spain or something.
No, I remember that they tried to shut me down. They stopped letting me go. I had to sneak in. I mean, this is one of those like, I need a Medal of Honor or something. I had to sneak to go to school, like the underground school.
And I got out of the military, so I was able to pursue.
I was so close to getting my degree, just to digress a little bit. I was so close to getting my degree when they found out that I was that close. They stopped letting me go. So what I had to do is go to school on my off time, and
that was hard.
And that was extremely difficult. But nevertheless, and then I got out.
Right.
You were already in the flow. Then when you came back and transferred to Morgan, you were only like what? You were going into your 4th year, but then because you not only did you switch, but you switched majors.
Right.
And then you lost all those credits, which added 3 additional years to your course of study.
Right.
But I was already working, so
Well, let me finish. So once I finished, then Tony went and finished his. And we both wanted to continue. So then it was my turn again to work on my master's degree. And then once I was done, then Tony was able to go back to school and get his JD and his MBA. And now I'm working on my my PhD. But those were things that we had to work with. And I mean, we had one car. I would have to drive him to work and then drive to school and then take Jay. We only had one child at the time.
We made a lot of sacrifices. For the sake of time, we had a lot of sacrifices.
I'm giving the example so that people can see, so that you can see what it looks like to work together for the common good of everyone, but everything can't happen at the same time. And because we worked together to do that, we were both able to accomplish what we wanted. We just couldn't do it all at once. And that's what worked. And it was still hard for us to do it, but we did it because we did it together.
And then even with that being said, I started working and started making more money and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking at other jobs. We talked about this on other webinars. But it's like, hey, I'm going to go for this job. You're like, at what cost? Because you're raising boys here. And now they get into the age where you have to start taking more responsibilities. You help them in the earlier nurturing stage. But as they got a little older, then I started working with molding them and talking about their purpose and destiny. It's like, you can't be out there doing that, even if it was going to bring in an additional 20, 30 grand into the house.
Right.
You used to said no, because look at the bigger picture. There's always a bigger picture. And that was tough. But even with that, we had to talk about, okay, Tony, what's really important here?
And it was because I knew what was important to you. And they were both important things.
They were both important.
But now you got to do the pros and cons of both. And so we just had that conversation.
And also, in addition to that, we know that even if you made more money, that doesn't necessarily make your children grow up better. As a matter of fact, you become a little more affluent. Your kids start experimenting with drugs and things of that nature because they have so much free time and no supervision. So
and my thing has always been, you get one chance,
you get one shot at it
to raise your children. We can always make money, but you can't always raise your children.
Which led to Felix Jean saying, "Parenting done right is hard work."
Parenting done right is hard work. That's our other book.
Yeah, you have to make some sacrifices there. Yeah. But we had to talk about it, because it's not like we just initially came out of the gate and like, oh yeah, fresh word from heaven, and I was just walking down the street and God gave me this rhema word and here's how it's going to be. We had to discuss it. We had to discuss it and make sure that we were getting on the same page. We talked about priorities being the same, because even then sometimes, like, even with the stresses of life, it's like, hey, well, we need some additional revenue. So.
And that was pressure on us.
That was pressure.
That was a serious decision to make.
And you can even forget your priorities, or even try to justify
why that can
justify your decisions. But
right.
I can honestly say I think we've made good decisions along the way when it comes to that.
I agree, babe.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, we're going to say something.
Yeah. So those are the main things. And Tony gave you some scriptures, some things you can look at. And there was one last scripture I wanted to offer, and it's Colossians 3. And if you look at Colossians 3, verse 12 and 13.
You need your eyes.
Yeah, I need my eyes. This is the thing that helps you realize that this really is a decision. Because it says, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long-suffering, bearing with one another, and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Christ forgave you, so you also must do. But above all these things, put on love. And so I looked at the word put on because it says it twice in those couple of verses, put on. That means make a choice to operate from this perspective. And those are the decisions, as we started off this conversation talking about. There are the cares of life that every day you're going to have to choose to be in unity. And in order to do that, you got to put on these things when you start your day and periodically throughout the day, because this is my friend, this is my husband, my wife, this is who I've chosen to spend the rest of my life with, and I'm going to work to make sure that we're unified in all that we do.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to tell you.
But you're going to go into it?
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on it a little bit just to give people something to think about. But you use that scripture, put on, the Bible talks about put on the new man, right? But the one thing I want to bring up is that we got to be cognizant of is the fact that when it says put on, that means you have to do it.
Yeah, you put on.
God's not going to do it for you. God's not going to make you do it. You have to make a conscious decision that I'm going to do this. And I think that's where a lot of times we miss it. Yes. A lot of times we try to give that responsibility to God. So God, you do it. And it's like, no, you put on the new man. You in this particular scripture, in the version that you read it from, I guess that's your New King James. You put on love, right? Yep. You have to do it.
You have to do it.
And you have to make up your mind to do it.
Yep. So pray for strength.
That's the key thing there.
But you're the one that's got to act that out.
All right, baby. Let's 8 o'clock. Close this thing out.
Okay. So what we put together, and this is our first time sharing this, we've made these magnets.
What's our first time sharing it here? We've shared it before.
Yeah. But these magnets are the 3 top ways to create a healthy relationship with your children, or 3 top ways to create a healthy marriage. And these go right on your refrigerator with the 3 top. Since we're talking marriage, we have the 2 shall become 1. And then we have some information here that will help you do that. The second one is schedule time to have fun. And the third one is show appreciation every day. So if you're interested in having these magnets, they're available on our website. You can get them if you have groups and you want to share them or give them as gifts. They make perfect gifts. And they are also constant reminders right before us what we can do to change our dysfunction into function that is glorifying God, which is so important.
So,
all right.
The books. Remind people about the books.
Go ahead.
Well, the books. You can get the books, any of the Done Right series on Amazon. Amazon.com, I was giving you to do it because I struggle. I can't get the angle right.
Babe, it's one big picture.
That's because the camera is actually angled more towards Nicole.
Just go ahead.
Okay, all right. So then I'm off there. But anyway, the books are on Amazon.com. You can get them by typing in the titles: Leadership Done Right is Hard Work, Parenting Done Right is Hard Work, or Marriage Done Right is Hard Work. But it's worth it with all those books. Or you can just simply type in our names, Tony and Nicole Davis,
or on our website.
I mean, if you get them from Amazon, type in Tony and Nicole Davis, and the books will pop up. Or you can go directly to the website. If you get it from the website, we'll actually sign them before they get shipped out to you.
And that's empowertoengage.com.
That's empowertoengage.com. And but for those of you who, like what we said, but I guess nobody's listening to us when we said that, because people say, yeah, I'm going to do it, but then they haven't done it yet. But for those of you who talked about the books, he said, man, this is really blessing me, and we're having fun, and we're doing things that we've never done before. Go to Amazon.com. Even if you didn't get it off Amazon, go to Amazon.com. And leave a message there in the review so that others can see that the book is blessing you. Yes. And finally, I just want to say Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers. Thank you. It's the Sunday, right? Yes. Thank you. That's like an apocrypha. That's like the hidden holiday, the buried holiday. Well, we thank you, and we need you. We need you. You are important to the family. So we celebrate you. Father's Day. And other than that, we say good night and thank you for joining us. Good night. And share the broadcast. We're trying to, build our following so that we can help marriages. Tony and I do coaching. We do mentoring to help parents, to help couples. So if this is something that you're interested in, premarital counseling, we do it all. We do trainings, workshops. So reach out to us. Our contact information is on our website, and we'd be more than happy to work with you. Have a good evening. Good night. Okay.